Columbus, but that is just north of our viewing area. Our main concern now is going to be the area that we're seeing right here. Northern parts of Jackson County. And we're going to work into, looks like parts of Jonesville, getting into E-Town, but this is, of course, just outside of our coverage area. Let's go reflectivity, back out. Again, we still have some more cells that have redeveloped in behind this that will track across the same areas. And notice where this has happened, we have a flash flood warning that's been issued for several areas that includes Bloomington, Clear Creek, Bloomfield. This is something also we have to keep in mind as these storms continue to develop. Looks like we have some back building going on. And all that means is storms are redeveloping in behind some of these cells, and this is what we're seeing. You got your main action right here, and we got more storms, some cells popping up in behind that. And sometimes what can happen is starts back building, new cells pop up, and they track over the same areas. And as that happens, that can cause some flash flooding issues to likely develop. Notice the flash flood warning again, well to our north. So it's just north, just out of our coverage area. But these storms tracking over some of these same areas like northern parts of Lawrence County, northern parts of Jackson County, some of these areas where we could see potentially some flash flooding issues try to show up. And these are producing a lot of heavy rainfall, a lot of moisture out there, a lot of moisture content for these storms to work with. And you get these storms that fire up like this, producing the heavier rainfall, tracking over the same areas over and over and over again. Well, that leads to your potential flash flooding issues, and we could certainly see some of that show up as we head over the next 30 to 45 minutes. And it doesn't take too long with some heavier rainfall falling like this to get into some flooding issues. And in fact, we're already seeing that. Heavy rain moved across these areas. Another storm cell developed, tracking back over the same spots once again. Well, that means some heavier rainfall and likely some flooding issues that will show up, hence the flash flood warning. Back to our northern parts of Jackson County there. Let's get a little bit tighter on that again. Check out that rotation, see what we're dealing with as far as the rotation is with that storm. Of course, these storms have had a history of rotation, and at one point in time, the storm over Columbus produced a debris signature just south of Bloomington. So these storms are pretty stout, pretty strong, and they've had a history of some rotation and potentially the one over Columbus putting down a tornado. So very active across these areas. Again, excuse me, northern parts of Lawrence County, Jackson County, now getting into northern parts of Jennings County. We're seeing severe thunderstorm warning that is out for northern parts of your area, and that goes until 9 p.m. tonight. Remember, we also have the tornado warning, northern parts of Jackson County. It continues until 9 o'clock as well. Folks there in Lawrence County, everything seems to be okay. You're picking up on some heavier rainfall as I speak, especially there in Guthrie, but just that. It's just heavy rainfall. You're getting some lightning as well. Let's take a look at velocity, and looks like we're trying to get a little bit of rotation to show up in spots, but it's right along the border once again. Not like we were seeing back to our north and northeast here with those cells, but we're seeing a little bit of rotation trying to show up in spots here, just north and west of Guthrie, and that's something we'll have to keep a close eye on. But just south of the border, south of Guthrie, it's just some heavier rainfall and a lot of lightning, some winds with that storm. Looks like we got a new scan coming in, and the tornado warnings continue as we track those off towards the east-northeast. Again, with these areas, if you're just joining in, just tuning in here, we have some tornado warnings that have been issued for the area. They did include parts of northern Lawrence County, now northern parts of Jackson County, and it looks like that warning was extended eastward into northwestern parts of Jennings County. A tornado with this area of some rotation circulation that we're seeing here. So here is the concern. We have 2 tornado warnings. I want to populate these for you. Goes until 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, both of these, but the area that we're concerned with, I'm going to circle so we can see what we're talking about here. These are the areas of concern as they track off towards the east-northeast. So let's clear that out. Let's get a little bit closer, and let's talk about some of the cities, some of the areas that it's impacting. Again, working right along the border here in northern parts of Jackson County. So folks there right along State Road 58, Spraytown, I mentioned you maybe about 5-10 minutes ago, talking about the rotating part of this thunderstorm heading eastward towards your area. Well, now it's beginning to knock on the door, that rotating part of the thunderstorm. And again, not something you're really going to be able to see just looking at the reflectivity on radar. So much heavy rainfall coming down with this storm. But we're getting in on some of that rotation right here, and it's getting ready to move in to this area. So right along State Road 58, folks there in Spraytown, this is tracking east and northeastward, and will continue to do so here over the next few minutes. Good idea to go ahead and get into your safe place now as this rotating thunderstorm continues to pass over your area. So again, here, looking ahead with this rotating thunderstorm, this tornado warning that we have for northern parts of Jackson County. Folks, ahead of it, you can see now that new scan, keeping a little bit of that rotation, and we're seeing that rotation showing up right along State Road. Again, Spraytown, right across the area. That's our concern, and it's pushing towards the east-northeast. Folks, ahead of this, looks like North County Road 25 East, East County Road 875. Any of you folks living across these areas, especially closer to the county line there, go ahead and get into your safe place. The storm is tracking towards your area. Good idea to head to your tornado safe place inside your home, basement. You don't have a basement, get into the center part of your home. Put as many walls as you can between you and the outside and stay away from windows. Of course, that's always a great idea whenever tracking a potential tornado warned storm here with some rotation heading into your direction. I'm going to step back out. I want to look at some of the other cells that we're keeping an eye on, making sure we're not getting any other rotation with these storms. So back out we go, and you can see just to our north, again, some more rotation showing up across those areas. And back to our west, north of Guthrie, again, a little bit of rotation there, but we're not seeing a whole lot. But still, something we're keeping a close eye on. And again, it's right along the border. Clearing things out, we go back out to our west, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of rotation with some of these cells that have developed back to our west and southwest. So good news there. Here's a look at reflectivity. Again, very, very busy as we scan the skies. Again, to our north. Folks there in Bloomsfield getting hit hard once again with a severe thunderstorm warning. They had some stronger cells that moved just through that area earlier this evening. But looking at radar, folks there in northern Lawrence County, just rainfall, a little bit of rotation, but it's across the border. If you live right along the border, maybe a good idea to head to your safe place. It's very weak, but it is there. Our major concern is back into northern parts of Jackson County. Folks, still, there in Brownstown, you're fine. No issues there. Seymour, the warning does not include your area. You're fine. You might get in on some rainfall heading your way in just a little bit. Again, it is just along the border. I'm going to zoom back in, and we're going to go back to velocity once again and focus in on our area that we're seeing. So it looks like across the border, if you're near Jonesville, it may be a good time to head to your safe place. And we're going to zoom in a little bit closer. So we go Mount Healthy down to Waymansville, and you can see some of the state roads that are populating here. West Seymour Road, West 930 South. These areas, this is where the rotating part of that thunderstorm is heading. It's tracking off towards the east and northeast. So good idea to go ahead and get into your safe place there. And you can see folks there in Spraytown, I believe. Yep, Spraytown, that rotation now beginning to edge just to your east. Again, the storm's moving off at about 30, 35 miles per hour towards the east-northeast. So let's focus in on these areas where we're seeing some of the rotation heading now. Again, high concentration right along the border here, northern parts of Jackson County. As this storm, the rotation continues across these areas. So North County Road 25 East, you live along that road, good idea to go ahead and get into your safe place. These areas towards the east, with this cell, this rotating cell, it's heading your direction. Again, great idea to get inside and get into that safe place. Likely getting some alerts, perhaps on your TV, on your phone, showing this tornado warning. Again, good idea with some of the rotation we're seeing here on wind velocity. So East County Road 875 North, North County Road 25, these areas, go ahead and get into that safe place as it continues to push off towards the east. All right, I'm going to zoom things back out once again. Again, this is where the storm activity is. It's to our north. That's where we're seeing it. And it's for our far northern counties here in southern Indiana. This has been the hot spot for today. Looking back at that storm cell over in Lawrence County, this would be just east of Guthrie now, north of Bedford. Not seeing much in the way of rotation, so good news there. Again, our concentration is back towards the east. Over to reflectivity, you can see the showers and storms that continue to light up the skies across these areas. Severe thunderstorms, flash flood warning in effect just to our north as well. And I was explaining that earlier. You know, you get these storms that develop and back build off some of these cells that continue to develop across the area. You're going to get those that track over the same spots, leading to some high water issues and some potential flash flooding problems. And that's a concern as well with some of these cells that have been moving right along the county borders there in northern Lawrence County, northern parts of Jackson County as well. Lots of lightning as well with the cells. And again, some of the rotation showing up now moving into northern and northeastern parts of Jackson County. So folks there in Seymour, again, you guys are okay. Not worried about you guys. We're doing fine. But the rotation is there just to the north of your area. And again, that tornado warning does not include Seymour. Back over to velocity, likely picking up on some high winds here that are approaching, looks like Jonesville right along the border here. And this is north of Seymour, going to get a little bit tighter in. We're going to take off this lightning, give us a better picture here. Again, these cells have been hugging the borders, starting from Lawrence County, now getting into northern parts of Jackson County. And this is the concern now moving towards the east. It looks like Waymansville Pike, folks along those areas, East County Road 875, Bobtown, West 1050 South, just across the county border there. Good idea to get into your safe place. Really strong storm, some rotation there tracking towards the east. And we're going to keep a close eye on this as we continue to track things out. Again, tuning in, we have a tornado warning. They allowed the one to expire back to our west, so that's good news for folks there in northern Lawrence County. Now, northern parts and northeastern parts of Jackson County, the warning still there, and it goes until 9 o'clock tonight. And now we have that severe thunderstorm warning as well, and this is for northern parts of Jennings County until 9 p.m. And what will likely happen here is hopefully this storm, the rotation begins to weaken out some. And as it does so and it tracks towards the east, they can just let that severe thunderstorm warning perhaps take over for northern parts. But also you have this cell back in across northern parts of Jackson County. And this is the cell that's going to track into Jennings County, and that's going to provide at least some gusty winds. There's no doubt about it. Potential there for some rotation as well. So let's zoom back in, and we're going to get rid of the severe thunderstorm warning there. Tornado warning continues until 9 o'clock for these areas, and we're going to continue to track these storms for you guys across this area. Folks there in Jonesville likely picking up on some good winds. A little bit of rotation there, of course, continues to show up, and that tornado warning continues for these areas. Again, right along the border, and there's a new scan there, and you can see some of the rotation showing up again across the border, but it is there. Folks there in Jonesville, across the border, getting into far northern parts of Jackson County. So Bobtown, East County Road 875, East County Road 1000, Little Acre. You live in and around some of these areas, good idea to get into your safe place, your tornado shelter, just to be on the safe side. We have some rotation showing up with this thunderstorm, tracking off towards the east-northeast, with that tornado warning that continues for northeastern parts of Jackson County. Back to our west, just want to keep a close eye on some of these cells. I'll take it back over to reflectivity, and you can see the cells continue to pop up, work over the same areas, hence the flash flood warning that continues back to our west. Now, this is not for any of our coverage area. It's just to the north. But again, look what's happening here. I was talking about these storms back building. So we'll see a healthy thunderstorm develop, for instance, like the one over in Balloonfield, now beginning to work through the area. Back towards the west, you're seeing another cell develop, and then just to the north of that, we have another cell developing. So you get these cells that keep developing in behind some of these stronger thunderstorms. They'll track over the same area, and as that happens, you get the heavy rainfall falling over the same spots over a course of an hour, 2 hours. That leads to flash flooding potential. Notice that green polygon continues to blink on and off, on and off. That's that flash flood warning for these areas. And the concern is there for this to potentially show up for some of our far northern counties here in southern Indiana. Northern parts of Lawrence County, northern parts of Jackson County. Again, you've had some heavy rainfall. And then notice more heavy rainfall knocking on the door. Back to your west, we're seeing some more heavy rainfall, and then again, more. And if it moves over the same area a repeated amount of times, this is what I'm talking about. We can run into some high water issues. So something we have to keep a really close eye on as we continue to track these storms over the next hour or so. Good news is, if you're in northern Lawrence County, just heavy rain and some stronger thunderstorms. Not seeing any rotation there. So good news there. Northwestern parts of Lawrence County, Jackson County, we're not seeing it. We're not seeing that rotation like we were. Just heavy rainfall moving back into some of the same areas, and it's really dropping the rainfall quick. Rotation still there just a bit in far northeastern parts of Jackson County. That's what we'll switch back over, just keeping a close eye on that rotation, its location, and where it's tracking. So here's what we're seeing. Of course, some of the storms back to our west, not seeing much in the way of rotation. So good news there. Again, just heavy rainfall. Back to our east, we're still seeing some of that rotation, and maybe some of the better rotation showing up just across the border there, maybe just north of Jonesville, picking up a little bit there. And again, into your safe place. If I'm in northeastern parts of Jackson County, this does not include Seymour, we're north of Seymour, good idea to go ahead and get into your safe place, and we'll pull in, go a little bit tighter here so we can populate some of these areas, folks right along the county border. Folks there in Bobtown, Little Acre, across the border in Jonesville, these are the areas that need to be in a safe place as this cell continues to track towards the east and northeast. I wanted to take a look at some of the rain amounts real quick as well, just because we've been talking about some of these cells that continue to track over the same areas, and I'm curious to see what kind of rain totals we're seeing just over the last few hours here. And I know it hasn't been raining that long, but that's just what we're able to pull up here within our system. So here's what we're seeing. And it's pretty clear to see the flash flood warning back to our north and west, just north of our coverage area. They've picked up on good amounts of rainfall, ranging likely from 1 upwards to 3 inches. And with some of these cells now tracking back over the same area, see what I'm talking about here? Far northern parts of Lawrence and Jackson County beginning to pick up on some of the heavier rainfall. I'm going to populate these areas just to show you what I'm talking about. So not much there, ½ inch, close to 1 inch, ½ inch. You got another cell that's training right back over the area that could dump another ½ inch up to 1 inch. Some of these spots could run into some high water issues, and that's what I've been trying to explain over the last little bit here with these cells that continue to develop back over the same areas while working over these same spots. So that's a concern as well as we move ahead into this evening with these storms. Back over to radar, we'll get you to reflectivity. Again, you can see some of the heavier rainfall moving across some of those same areas. Here we are. Heavy rainfall, we got another, and then another cell back here, and they're all tracking towards the east-northeast, and that's going to work over some of the same areas leading to some potential high water issues. It looks like we got Matt Milosevic in. He just walked in. He's going to help me out just a little bit. We got, of course, that flash flood warning just to our north. Matt, I've been explaining to the folks about some of the heavier rainfall we've been seeing, and then obviously the tornado warning, it continues for far northeastern parts of Jackson County. Rotation there, but it looks like maybe some of the better rotation just north of the border now.
Yeah, hey Chris, yeah, we've been watching these closely as they've had confirmed tornadoes with some of these supercell thunderstorms from earlier this afternoon, and now as we head into the early evening up around Monroe and Greene County, Bloomfield, Bloomington area too, and we are watching some of these storms get very close in towards the WLKY viewing area with some of that heavier rotation that we've been watching that's prompted some of these tornado warnings here in parts of the WLKY viewing area, far northern communities. This is north of Seymour, so that is good news right now, but as you track up Interstate 65, obviously we're going to be watching very closely for the potential for these rotating thunderstorms, and you can see that with the red and green. Chris has been talking about this for the better part of the last hour, and where we see some of the lighter shades of green, that is where we start to look for a little bit more in the way of steadier rotation here. Now, that is north of both Jennings and Jackson County, between Hope and Westport, Indiana, and well off to the east of Columbus. But notice we have more in the way of rotation, and some of that is trying to get into at least the far northern portions of Jackson County, even though just off towards the north of you. So again, between Seymour and Columbus is the worst part of this storm as it progresses on off towards the east and northeast. We'll be watching it very closely as it does, but again, these are the couple of cells that we are watching, and this does include portions of the WLKY viewing area, even though this is well off towards the north here at portions of Jackson and also Jennings County eventually. Here as this continues to march on off towards the east and northeast. Putting it in motion, this is the rotation that we are tracking. And again, it's right along the far northern edge of the Jackson County line. This will affect portions of far northwestern Jennings County too. Now, while the worst of this rotation, the worst of this storm looks to go north of you into North Vernon and some very rural locations there in northern portions of Jackson and Jennings County, we'll watch out the Interstate 65 corridor, also around State Highway 7 too, as we march on through the duration of this warning. And these storms do continue to maintain their intensity across the region. We'll also watch for some strong wind gusts around these storms, some very heavy rain. Chris was showing you that, as well as the flash flood warnings that continue back off towards the west. Now, notice farther to the south, this does not include places like Scottsburg, over towards Salem, Paoli, and Madison. You are free and clear from these storms and this severe weather threat. And farther off to the south, including the metro and through Kentucky, these storms are all much farther to the north along a boundary that has created these stronger thunderstorms across the region. We've been monitoring over the National Weather Service chat lines that we have here through the Indianapolis and the Louisville National Weather Service offices, as we often do when we have severe weather across the region, picking up some confirmation in terms of tornadoes farther to the north and west near Monroe County and Greene County, Indiana, and Owen County as well earlier. But as of yet, we have not seen anything confirmed towards Jackson and as this progresses off into Jennings County as well. So some very good news there. We earlier saw some very well, really, Chris, you know, we were watching some of the correlation coefficients, and that can show some of the debris signatures within any tornadic storms. And luckily, we're not seeing that right now in the WLKY viewing area. As I turn that on, and we'll go back a few steps here, none of the tornado-warned storms are showing indications of sending debris into the air. So that is very, very good news, of course. But that was something that we were seeing earlier up around and just south and west of Bloomington.
Yeah, it really was. And I was talking about, that's the same cell that is pushed off working through parts of Columbus, I believe, now. So the strongest cell that I was seeing as far as the rotation was concerned in previous history, Matt, was that one that was just south of Bloomington, but it was just north and northeast of our coverage area. So that was good news there, but still a really dangerous storm that had a history of producing a potential tornado. And like you were saying, and we were talking earlier, that debris signature was there. Notice the rotation, like Matt was saying, just north now of far northeastern parts of Jackson County. So we're likely seeing potentially the most dangerous part of that storm, that rotating part of the thunderstorm, beginning to push towards the north and east. So good news there, but we continue to see the heavy rainfall across some of the same areas. And again, we're seeing more heavy rainfall work across the border into northwestern parts of Jackson County. That's working through northern parts of Lawrence County. And again, you have some heavier rain moving right along the border once again, tracking towards the east now as we get into the next 15 to 20 minutes. So again, heavy rainfall all marching towards the east, going west to east, which could lead to some potential flooding issues. And that's something, of course, we're going to have to keep a close eye on. But it does look like some of the strongest part of that rotation now just to our north and east. So some good news there. And let's switch it back over to velocity, see if we can get some of that rotation confirmed. It looks like some of that is now pushing north and east, but still in northeastern parts of the county, we're seeing some of that rotation show up across the area. And I'm going to highlight that, get on the wall and show you exactly what I'm talking about as we continue to keep this in motion. So we have the areas of rotation up to our north, just out of the coverage area, far northeastern parts of Jackson County. Now you can see that rotation still there. Perhaps some of the better rotation was showing up just north of the coverage area. This would be north of Jonesville and some of the outlying communities just outside of our area. But again, northeastern parts of the county, Jackson County, still a good idea maybe to be in that safe place just because of the rotation we're seeing within this storm. Now it looks like, what do we got there, Matt? Are you seeing this? Northeastern parts of Lawrence County? Perhaps a little bit of rotation trying to show up there.
And
right on
like
the corner, maybe.
Also prompting another tornado warning there,
we go.
Chris. So we'll be watching and keeping eyes on that as all of these storms that have formed up to the north over the past couple of hours have all been rotating and rotating quickly. So the tornado warning that was in effect for just north of Seymour right now is looking to be expanded, and it looks like that particular storm is going to go now until 9:30, so the better part of the next 45 minutes, and that is going to include the Seymour area. We'll have to watch that very closely to see if that rotation that you were talking about in far north and western portions of Jackson County, if that goes due east, that would be just north, it looks like, of downtown Seymour, Indiana. But if that nudges a little farther to the south, that's something that is we're going to be watching closely, because as you can see on that wind velocity, the rotation there has really picked up in just a couple of scans of the radar.
Yeah, and I was looking at reflectivity just a few minutes ago, and it had a signature that was catching my eye, and then we switched it over to velocity. You can absolutely see the rotation there. And if we could, maybe, Matt, zoom in a little bit closer on that and perhaps slow down this animation or stop that animation and see if we can get a little bit closer here and track this out for the folks maybe that could be knocking on a door, because the rotation there a little bit tighter. This one's a little bit tighter as opposed to what we were seeing with some of the other rotation, the rotating thunderstorms that we had. Tornado warning, of course, continues until 9:30 p.m. This is the new one that's been extended just from this rotation, this couple that we're seeing now, back across northwestern parts of Jackson County, and it's tracking off towards the east, and we're going to put a timetable on this for you. So folks there in Freetown, Spraytown, again, Spraytown showing up. We had that rotation, remember, earlier, moving across this area. Once again, another storm tracking towards the east-northeast. Jonesville at 909, Seymour 909. So folks there in Seymour, this does include your area. Now, this tornado warning that it has been issued, it goes until 9:30. It does include Seymour. So now we're talking a little bit further south across northern parts of the county. Earlier, it was right along the county line there. And as we put it on reflectivity, you can see that signature catching a little bit of rotation, a little bit of my attention as well, because that's typically a signature that you put into a rotating part of the atmosphere. You get some spin out there, and you can see the loop here. Matt, that's great, showing some of the rotation we're seeing with this thunderstorm here.
It is. It's just it's starting to take on that kind of that backward C approach, the hook echo, if you will, that we tend to look for when you begin to get inflow winds into the tightest part of the rotation of that storm. So it's one that, again, has popped up very quickly, but in the same area of these other severe thunderstorms that we have been watching. And they may fluctuate a little bit over the next couple of minutes. We've seen the rotation on these do that. This is obviously popping up pretty quickly across the area. Also want to tell everyone, too, that we are now live streaming both on Facebook Live on WLKY News and on WLKY.com. So if you are in these areas or you have friends and family up there that maybe have trouble getting us over the air, you can get us online, both through Facebook at WLKY News and WLKY.com, Chris. But we'll put the loop back on this here once again, and you can see that rotation does look like it's traveling due east right along the northern Jackson County line there, almost following the current one that we were watching just north of Seymour now with that rotation, which over the last couple of scans of the radar looking a little less organized near Elizabethtown, Indiana.
Yeah, not as much of a concerned look as what we had earlier, so good news there. Now we begin to shift our attention back towards the west over some of the same areas when I first started cutting in with these tornado warnings that were being issued. Again, these cells have developed and they're working into part of an atmosphere that's got some spin with it, and these storms start developing. They develop at a pretty high rate, and look what happens. You get some rotation with this thunderstorm. Got a bit of a signature here that we're seeing, as Matt was playing, almost like a little bit of a hook echo there. That's northwestern parts of Jackson County. And now this couplet that we're seeing here, a little bit tighter than what we were seeing earlier. Earlier it was a little bit more broad. The rotation was there, obviously, but it was broader. This couplet a little bit tighter, and it's perhaps a little bit more concerning as well as it continues to push eastward through northern parts of Jackson County. Is there any way we could get another timetable on this for some of the communities that it's going to be working eastward through, Matt? Just to let folks know, give them a heads up, go ahead and get to their
you bet. We're going to Chris, we'll track the worst part of that storm, the worst part of the rotation that's moving out of northwestern Jackson County there, and it's just about moving due east at about 50 miles per hour. So when you see these communities come on, that's the folks who do need to be in their tornado warning shelter here, and that does include the Seymour, Indiana area. You're going to want to pay close attention to this one over about the next 20 minutes. So if you're in Seymour right now, just start making those plans to head into your safe place, because we have had some reports over the last couple of hours here through the late afternoon of these storms through southern and central portions of Indiana with confirmed tornadoes. Now, that is not including this particular cell. This is radar indicated, but ones farther to the north in Greene, Owen, also Monroe County, we did have confirmed tornadoes. Also had a confirmed tornado up towards Bartholomew County. So for those of you who know the Hoosier State well, those are some counties with some fairly big cities in them. So it's something that we're going to continue to watch, because it's a similar atmosphere that's transitioning again into the far northern portions of the WLKY region with some of this rotation. Chris, earlier I was doing a little bit of a closer look at this storm, was getting some gate-to-gate shear upwards of 80, 85 miles per hour with this one. So it is a very strong sign of rotation there, even though it is very compact.
Yeah, and what Matt's talking about here, gate to gate, what we mean is we get really tight in. We put the pixels where you get the light, the bright greens right next to the reds. That's gate-to-gate shear. And typically when we start seeing that with our storm velocity, our wind velocity, or through our radar, that's telling us we got some pretty good winds there, a good tight rotation that's starting to develop. And that's exactly what we're seeing with this couplet. You're getting those reds lining up right next to the greens. You put those two together, and that gives you that rotation we're seeing within this thunderstorm. So, and you can see the loop there from Matt. That's a great way to illustrate it. You can see as the storm tracks pretty much due east, that rotation, that couplet getting a little bit tighter. So let's talk about some of the areas it's going to hit. Spraytown, 858, Jonesville, 910. Same for Rockford, Seymour, Redington, 914. Go ahead and get to your safe place. Any of these areas, especially as this storm works off towards the east. Folks there in Seymour, been talking about you a lot earlier, but now we have the tornado warning that does include your area. So good idea to go ahead and get into your safe place as this tornado warned storm continues to track towards the east. And you know, some folks try to look outside, maybe see what's going on. Don't do that. Just go ahead and get into your safe place. We got some good rotation showing up via radar here, our velocity image. No reason to try and chance anything like that. Just get inside, stay safe as this storm continues to push eastward over the area. And again, Matt, back to our west, we're seeing more cells develop. Not necessarily seeing potential rotation with any of those, I don't think, but the heavy rain continues to fall, and that's going to be an issue, and that's something we're going to keep a close eye on. Is that a little bit more rotation that was trying to show up back to our west there, Matt?
Yeah, Chris, I'll go back to that because it was...
That caught my eye there, yeah.
Yeah, each of these storms have had, you know, some indications that they are trying to rotate with all of these. In fact, I'm going to go to the Indianapolis radar. I might have a little better zooming in on that. And even south of Bloomington, north of Bedford, Indiana, some of these are still, you know, trying to rotate in this atmosphere that earlier in the afternoon before the tornado watch and during the tornado watch issuance, Storm Prediction Center was kind of, you know, increasingly interested in the ability of storms to rotate into southern Indiana through this afternoon and now into the evening hours. So we'll have to continue to watch this. It does not look like, and there's no indications from any of the forecast models or what we're looking at right now, that this severe weather threat is going to migrate farther to the south and into the Ohio River Valley. So this is all going to stay into our far northern communities, but we have had several little indications on the radar of rotation. One starting to move in towards north and western portions of Jennings County, another that we've been currently watching very closely in northwestern Jackson County, and also in southern Monroe County. We see a little bit, at least the hint of some rotation from those thunderstorms that continue to march on across the region, the far northern parts of the WLKY area. So again, well away from the metro, but these are storms that are in parts of our WLKY viewing area, our neighbors to the north, and we want to keep them well informed of some of these storms because we have had confirmed tornadoes farther to the north, but part of this same storm system, we've had confirmed tornadoes earlier today, Chris.
Are we seeing anything in chat? I haven't seen anything in chat that show up. I didn't know if
I haven't,
something...
and I think that's some good news, because I do think there's a fair amount of the emergency managers and the storm spotters that are in these areas that are on these storms because of what we saw earlier to the north. So right now these are all radar indicated, but nonetheless, you know, it's been an atmosphere and an environment that's been conducive for, you know, confirmed tornado development.
You're absolutely right. And again, we go back to Clear Creek, which is just south of Bloomington, where we had that debris signature showing up. And these are some of the cells. Now they've pushed through our area, but new cells developing, working into an atmosphere that is capable of spinning these storms. And we're seeing just that with more, some rotation trying to show up once again back to our west. And it looks like if they continue to hold or strengthen, working towards the east, that's going to put potentially another tornado warning out for some of the same areas. So something we'll keep a close eye on. So looks like now they're in northwestern parts of Jennings County. We got a little bit of that rotation showing up there. This is north and west of North Vernon. So looks like folks in the city, okay, the strongest part of the storm, the rotation showing up just to your northwest. Matt's pulling up some of the wind speeds we're seeing on each side there. So we got some decent winds showing up within this wind couplet, this velocity couplet that we're seeing working into northwestern parts of Jennings County. You can see, look at all that heavy rainfall there, some of the reds, purple showing up. There's the signature we look for with a little bit of that rotation, and it's certainly showing up as it crosses the border, working towards the east as it heads into northwestern parts of Jennings County. So again, another cell back to our west, the one we've been keeping a close eye on. This is northwestern parts of Jackson County, again with some tighter rotation, that tighter wind velocity image, that couplet that we're seeing, and it's taking on a similar look to it. Tornado warning, of course, continues until 9:30. I believe this one is for northern parts of Jackson County, stretching into parts of Jennings County as well. So that goes until 9:30 tonight. Tornado warning continues for those areas, and you can see why. We got that rotating cell, that tornado warning that continues to push off towards the east. Radar indicated, showing that rotation. We've been looking at the velocity imagery, and we've had some decent gate-to-gate shear showing up, I believe up to about, what, 80, 85 miles per hour, Matt? That's what you were seeing?
Correct.
So, you know, some decent wind showing up within that rotation there, and something you certainly need to get into your safe place and wait for this storm to pass over. Unfortunately, back to our west, these storms are riding right along this boundary. And it's producing, of course, some of the stronger to severe thunderstorms, but also just working into an area with a lot of rotation out there. So these storms are developing, they're going up, and we're starting to get some spin with some of those storms. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Heavy rainfall also could be an issue. I was talking about that just a little bit ago. Some of these cells bringing heavy rainfall, working over the same areas, and you can see more of that activity back to our west, and they're pushing eastward. You put heavy rainfall over the same spot for a repeated amount of times, it's going to give you some flash flooding issues. And look at the rainfall totals. My gosh, really beginning to amp up there from just what I was pulling up, Matt, maybe 15 minutes ago. This is incredible. Some spots were showing 1 upwards to 2 inches. Now we have spots just to our north, not in our coverage area, but just to the north, showing upwards to 2, 3, plus almost 4 inches of rainfall, with the yellow showing up, some of the orange as well. But notice right along the county lines here, we're seeing some of those rain totals begin to add up some, and it's because these storms are tracking over the same area. So northern parts of Lawrence County, northern parts of Jackson County, we're seeing some of the lighter to darker greens show up, highlighting some of the heavier rain that we've picked up over the area. And you can see there, he highlighted a spot, Matt did, 1.5 inches in far northern parts of the county. So you get more of these storms track over the same area. Again, that's going to lead to some issues, and we're seeing that. That's likely some of the heavier rainfall falling from this cell right here that has that rotation with it pushing eastward. And then look what's lining up back to our west once again. This is going to lead to some potential problems as far as high water issues, especially for the areas north of this, but also right along the county borders for some of the areas that we cover, Matt.
Yeah, and Chris, also want to look farther back off to that Jennings County storm because that was a new tornado warning that was put on that. That goes until now 9:45. So that is going to include North Vernon and Vernon, Indiana as well. So through central and northern portions of Jennings County, be on the lookout for that storm. Also starting to get a hail core with that one as well. You can see that in the purple and pink shades there, right along State Highway 7 between Elizabethtown and North Vernon, Indiana. These are quite rural areas and communities there in the northern Jennings County, but nonetheless, we are likely getting some hail with that. Those hailstones could be about a ½ inch in diameter, maybe up to penny-sized hail. So not quite severe levels with that, but enough to make some noise. Also some high wind gust, and again, the rotation that we've been monitoring. And that's why we're on the air here continuously for you, is because the rotation with these storms continues to ramp up. And it's something that we need to keep an eye on and have been for you, because while we do look at some of these storms increasingly closely for certain things, you know, Chris, looking at this too lately, kind of looks like maybe a stronger straight line wind gust, but also right on the northern edge of that, still some curvature and rotation.
A little bit of rotation right here. That's exactly what Matt's talking about. The rotation, perhaps a little bit stronger on the northern side of this, and those winds just to the south right here, some straight line winds likely rocking through. So if you're living in and around these areas just north of North Vernon, you're likely seeing a little bit of rotation for the northern extent of this, but those winds would not be surprised. Almost like a backward C, and you know, that could be throwing some good winds. At the apex of that, you get some high wind gusts that try to show up, and that's exactly what we could be seeing there, Matt, just north Vernon. Back to our west, it looks like we still have that couplet showing up, Matt, for that tornado warned storm as well across northern parts of Jackson County, and that continues. It's right along the border, and that's where all of these storms have been tracking across. And you can see once again a little bit of that signature trying to show up there, almost like a hook echo, and you typically get some rotation when you see a signature like this one, radar, and there it is once again, a little bit tighter for that couplet than what we've been seeing. And also back to our west, it looks like, or east, excuse me, Matt's putting an extension on this, showing us where this storm is going to track out over the next 15 to up to about 30 minutes. So you can see there, folks, there in Brewersville, 9:07 p.m. North Vernon. It's moving east now at 9:08. Should move into your area, North Vernon, so right into the city limits. Butlerville getting into Jackson, Holton, 9:26 p.m. This storm likely putting down some hefty winds. And notice the northern part of this right here where we're seeing some of that rotation. Here's another tracker for you that Matt's putting out for us. These storms moving pretty quick now, up to about 45, 50 miles per hour towards the east. And for this cell, I believe this is the tornado warning that includes Seymour, continues until 9:30 p.m. This storm heading into Rockford at 9:13. We get into, say, around 15 after, 16 after, Reddington, Queensville, North Vernon. Again, this cell heading back into your direction. So not only you're dealing with a severe thunderstorm, another rotating thunderstorm across your area, but also you have another tornado warned storm tracking east that's going to move back into the area here in the next about 25 minutes or so. And then that's going to continue to push off towards the east, folks, there in Vernon at 9:31. And again, we're seeing some of that rotation still showing up. And it looks like, Matt, over the last couple scans here, we've seen it try to amp up just a little bit.
And we've seen that with these storms too, and that's typical of supercell thunderstorms, a little bit of an oscillation and a pulsing, if you will, of the severity of the storms. Right now, the pulse has been higher for the storm in northern Jennings County. It's starting to produce some hail too. Now starting to get indications that we could see quarter-sized hail with that strong storm there into Jennings County, north of North Vernon. That looks to be where the worst of that cell will be, but something we'll be continuing to monitor over the next couple of minutes as this storm moves through Jennings County. Also, again, with some of that rotation. As far as the Jackson County storm goes, that same thing you were talking about, Chris, is that storm continues to, from time to time, show that little couplet right there north of Brownstown and off to the west and northwest of Seymour begins to show increasing signs that it is at times trying to strengthen and perhaps produce a tornado. These storms are, both of them are tornado warned until the bottom half of the 9 o'clock hour, 9:30 for this Jackson County storm and 9:45 for the Jennings County storm. So if you are in the location of northern Jackson and northern Jennings County, you're going to want to be indoors, number one, away from windows, and head towards the basement and the storm shelter if you have one, especially if you're right along that northern Jackson County line. The worst of that storm looks to go just north of you in Seymour, but that is one that's nonetheless packing a punch. And that one, Chris, in Jennings County too, was looking at some of the tops of the clouds there, getting up to 50,000 feet with that supercell thunderstorm. That looks to be right now, at least in terms of the cellular nature too, and with the hail core as well. That's the strongest of the two right now, it looks to be.
Did they get an extension on that? It looks like maybe a tornado warning now that has been pushed eastward for Jennings County. Is that right? All the way?
Yes, that's the one that goes.
Okay, that was until 9:45, right?
Yep, that goes until 45. Yep.
Yeah, and what Matt was talking about, this storm, 50,000 feet up, that's a pretty stout thunderstorm, and you're likely getting a nice little hail core that's developing, indicated here on Doppler radar. You start seeing these purples show up within the cell, a supercell like this, you're likely going to be getting in on some hail that's going to start falling across some of these areas. And like Matt was mentioning earlier, maybe up to about ½ inch or so, just enough to provide for some good noise across across the area that the hail is falling. But this is just north now of North Vernon, and we're likely seeing some hail. Not seeing much show up there with our hail tracker. There we go, a little bit trying to show up. Took it just a second to populate there. So we are seeing some hail that is falling via radar across parts of those areas, and that's indicated well with that purple showing up. Also, rotation with this storm, likely seeing some strong winds as well. And you can see the rotation there on the northern side of it. Winds really stout just to the south, and this is likely working right now into the North Vernon area. So folks, anywhere along this area, and Matt, I'm not sure what this highway is here that runs from North Vernon all the way to the north, getting into Westport, but folks along this area need to go ahead and get into a safe place. Anyway, we can zoom in a little bit closer there.
We'll get closer in on that one, and that's going to be, well, shoot, that's going to give us the velocity there. But I will get that for you here in just a short second.
Right along that area, just go ahead and get into your safe place, because like I said, we're seeing some rotation on the northern part here, and then winds likely cranking up pretty good right along the highway here as this continues to push off towards the east and northeast with this cell. Folks there in North Vernon, you're likely seeing some winds, some rain, some heavier rainfall starting to pick up. And notice a little bit of that rotation is showing up to our north now, and that's working into right along the border. So folks there in Westport likely going to get in on some of that rotation here in just a bit. But they, of course, extended that tornado warning for Jennings County that goes until 9:45 p.m. What about back to our west, Matt? What are we seeing with some of the cells out to our west? Any more rotation trying to show up with some of these cells that are popping up, say, back towards our west, not including Jackson County, but getting into, say, northern parts of Lawrence County? Yeah, we'll go back over towards that west there. You can see, and we'll flip on towards the storm relative velocity or the rotation. Oh, wow. And, you know, we do have, I mean, it's the same, it's very similar to what we have in northern Jackson County. And, you know, you would think, Chris, and what's typical is, you know, after you bring thunderstorms in over the same area, that you tend to work over and work out the fuel for those thunderstorms. But it doesn't look to be the case right now. That boundary that's up there is one that is very stout, if you will, in producing rotation with these thunderstorms. Just because a storm is rotating does not mean it's going to produce a tornado, but it does bring in that potential, especially when we start to get into stronger and severe storms that we could be dealing with, as we are right now into portions of Jennings and Jackson County, the potential for tornadoes. And it's a radar that looks like this that produces those tornado warnings that are issued by the National Weather Service, and ones that at least earlier today were producing confirmed tornadoes just a little farther to the north of this particular line earlier this afternoon. So that is why we're covering these storms for you live on WLKY. We are streaming as well on WLKY.com and our WLKY News Facebook site, so you can get those too if you're in these locations. Perhaps you go and have your power go out. Perhaps as long as your laptop or your phone is working, that's a time where you can stream us and stay up to date on the information here, because Chris, like you said, what's looking off towards the west is at least storms that bear watching for the next hour or two. Absolutely, and like you said, they're right heading right along this boundary that was setting. I was talking to Matt earlier about it, and it looks like they continue just to work west to east right along the same areas. And of course, just to our north, that's why we have that flash flood warning, because of all the heavy rainfall we've been picking up for some of those areas. But my concern grows for some of the areas right along the county borders for our viewing area. So we're talking northern Lawrence County, northern parts of Jackson County, getting into northern parts now of Jennings County, because we're seeing heavy rainfall move through these areas. Another cell here working eastward, another cell, and they just continue to track over the same areas. And as I mentioned before, this leads to your potential flash flooding issues that will show up. So not only are we talking about a couple tornado warnings, some storms with rotation, and some storms with rotation back to our west, but they're working over the same spots, providing for very heavy rainfall. And just to our north, as we showed you earlier, rain amounts were ranging between 2 upwards to 3, close to 4 inches in some spots. You get that much rain to fall in a short time span, couple hours, you're going to get into some big issues as far as high water issues are showing up. Again, just south of Bloomington, and you can see that west to east orientation. But notice, right along the border, this is what we're keeping an eye on. And notice in northern parts of Jackson County now, some of those darker greens begin to show up in spots. 1.5 inches, close to it in some of those areas. Again, remember, we have some more cells back to our west. They're going to work back over some of these same spots already well saturated. You get some heavy rainfall, another 1/2 inch, 1.5 inches of rain to fall in the next hour or so. Could see a flash flood warning go up here in just a little bit, so something to keep in mind. Also, something to watch really closely, as Matt was talking about, rotation. These storms, these cells are working into an environment that just has that spin out there. This is just the kind of setup we're in, and it's doing so right along this boundary. Just north now of North Vernon. Look at this. We got some rotation showing up there. Has been. Still something folks need to take serious. So just east of North Vernon. Good idea to get into your safe place. And look at the rotation detector there. And it's showing, we're just purely focusing in on the rotation, the rotating part of these cells, these supercells that we're seeing. And in fact, if you're in North Vernon right now and just outside the city limits, good idea to get into your safe place if you're not already there, because we're seeing that rotation beginning to show up. And it's showing up some reds indicating some strong rotation at one point in time. Now the new scan showing maybe the rotation weakening just a bit, so some good news there. But again, if you're in North Vernon, just some of the outlying areas, outlying of the city limits there, get into your safe place, because again, this storm has some rotation showing up. Back to our west, again, you can see the rotation showing up within some of these cells, and doesn't look or doesn't appear to be as strong. Folks there in Seymour, looks like that rotating part of the cell mat just north of the city limits there, so potentially some good news there. But still, in northeastern parts of Jackson County, we have that rotation there with that cell as it's tracking off towards the east and northeast by just a bit there. Notice more of the same back to our west. So folks here, over the next 30, 45 minutes, we got to keep a close eye on these cells as they track off towards the east. They got some rotation with them. And we have some heavy rainfall. And as I've already been talking about, some flash flooding issues could likely show up in some of these spots right along the border here as they move over to some of the same spots. Matt, anything new on your side there? You know what, the good news is monitoring the chat line and stuff like that, I'm not seeing anything that is giving us any indications that, you know, we are seeing an uptick in reports here from these storms. A lot of the worst of it does look to appear to be a little farther to the north in terms of what's been coming in on the from the National Weather Service out of Indianapolis. So that's obviously very, very good news, but it's something to keep an eye on because there have been reports of, you know, trees down, campers blown over, confirmed tornadoes. That's farther on off to the north. In fact, our friends in Bloomington, boy, they seem to have just dodged a bullet with strong rotation both to the north and south. Therefore, if you have family and kids maybe still taking summer classes up in the IU campus, that's they dodged a bullet, to say the least. Clear Creek up towards Ellettsville saw some very, very strong storms there, and those are just now in the southern portions of Monroe County, and we'll have to monitor those as they continue to move farther and farther on off towards the east, because it is kind of forming into that line. But tell you what, Chris, even though we do have some rotation in the storms, you were pointed out, for our
far northern portions of the WLKY area, this may very well get into a heavy rain event as we now start to move into the mid-evening hours here this Saturday night.
And that was something I tried to focus in on, Matt, earlier with an update I put out on social media. You know, we had the threats there for some damaging winds and, of course, some rotating thunderstorms, some supercells. That was certainly high on the list, but also something that trying to focus in on was the potential flooding issues, just because there's so much moisture content out there with these storms to work with. There's just a lot of juice, and these storms are firing up. They're strong, and they're really dropping a lot of heavy rainfall, and it's certainly visible as we continue to loop Doppler radar here. And you can see those darker reds, the yellows, at times some purple indicating very heavy rainfall, even some hail that's falling within some of these cells and supercells that unfortunately continue to track over the same areas. And you know, they still have that flash flood warning out just north of our area. But again, my focus and my concern as we move forward over the next couple hours, 2 to 3 hours, will be these storms is training over the same area. And what I mean is you get cells that pop up, they work over one spot, and then you go back to your west, you'll see another cell that moves eastward, works over that same spot again. You go back behind that, you get what I'm saying. That's what we call training of storms, and it's working over that same spot, those same locations, dropping heavy amounts of rainfall. That's going to lead to some potential flash flooding issues in a hurry, and that is a concern, especially for northern parts of Jackson County, right along the border there in Lawrence County. And we have to keep a close eye on folks there in northern Jennings County as well, because strong storms continue to push towards the east. Anything new with our rotation as far as these storms are concerned, Matt?
You know what? Some good news there, Chris, is also to the National Weather Service behind that storm in north and eastern portions of Jackson County. None of those are warned for severe weather right now. So even though there are some areas of rotation, I'll put that back on for you, and you can see those there. None of those are currently prompting any severe thunderstorm or tornado warnings. So the warnings that go for the northeastern Jackson County until 9:30, and that mainly northern half of Jennings County until 9:45. If we can continue this trend, perhaps they may not be extended, but you can see these are still very robust showers and thunderstorms into this portion of the WLKY region that are training over that same location. So we are going to continue to monitor them for you, but as we get towards the bottom half of the hour, if we can sustain weaker rotation on the radar, then it looks like we'll be allowed to get some of these tornado warnings to drop off. But nonetheless, still some stronger storms out there. Back into southern Monroe County, Chris, and also into Greene County, still some indications of at least some small hail with some of those towering storms, and also that hail threat is now pushing into the eastern portions of Jennings County with that supercell thunderstorm just to the north and east of North Vernon.
Yeah, exactly right here. And again, you can see some of the pinks showing up, the purples indicating some of that hail that's likely falling across those areas. And again, this is right along the city limits there in North Vernon, points to the north and east, where the strongest part of that cell continues to track off towards the east and slightly northeast there, but still very heavy rainfall working over the same areas, gusty winds, and a little bit of rotation still there with that storm as it continues to track off. Now back towards our west, we're seeing, well, more of the same, but the rotation not as robust as what we were seeing earlier, so good news there, but it's still there. A little bit of rotation, but notice back to our west, the storms aren't rotating as tightly, as strongly as what they once was before. So that is some good news. But still, just north of Seymour, you can still see some of that rotation. And this is our rotation detector, which purely focuses in on that rotation, and that's it. And you can see it. It was stronger moving in from parts of northeastern Jackson County into Jennings County, and then that rotation began to weaken out. So that was certainly good there. But it's still rotating storms that are lining up back to our west. But notice they're not as pronounced back to our west, so that's good news. We got some rotating thunderstorms certainly that are producing some heavy rainfall, perhaps some gusty winds. But Matt, I think we're going to start shifting potentially these storms over to a flood threat if we continue to track over these same areas And from what I'm seeing on radar, that's certainly going to be a good possibility.
Yeah, and that is going to be the case. I mean, we felt that humidity come rushing back in after those couple of cooler, drier mornings and afternoons that were so pleasant. And now it's that humidity, that Gulf of Mexico humidity, that's fueling not only these thunderstorms, but the heavy rain with them. And in a short period of time, you can pick up a couple inches of rain with these. And it'll continue to be those similar locations, Chris. You've been pointing this out, too. The same areas that have been under the warnings are also the same areas that are going to be under the flood threat as we move these storms into the later evening hours, and likely not seeing too many of them wind down until we get into the cool of evening, perhaps not until after midnight.
Yeah, it could be a little bit later on tonight before a lot of this activity finally begins to, start pushing out of our area, but also beginning to wind down too. And notice some of the heavier hit areas that we continue to see this heavy rainfall just north of our coverage area, and it's some of these spots that have picked up on 2-3+ inches of rainfall. Again, my concern here is where a lot of this action has been taking aim at has been right along the county borders here for our far northern counties. So folks there in Jackson, far northern Jackson County, getting into parts of just north of Brownstown, that's far northern Lawrence County, northern Jackson County, and the Jennings County. That is the area of concern where we could be picking up on that heavy rainfall that continues to add up. And of course, that's going to lead to some potential high water issues. And it still looks like, Matt, we have more cells trying to build back to our west that could potentially work eastward once again. You would think maybe after some time, these storms that would work over the same area would start robbing some of that energy. But like you said, we have just so much moisture content in the atmosphere, and with this setup, it just continues to drive these cells working over the same areas, and like I said, leading to heavy rainfall over the same spots.
Yeah, you would think so, right? But we haven't been able to see that quite yet. Hopefully we'll begin starting to see some of that reduction in the strength of these storms as we make our way through the next few minutes. But at least right now, they're still able to pulse from time to time in the southern Monroe County, south of Bloomington. Some very heavy rainfall there, and perhaps some hail as well. We'll also be watching in the storm relative velocities here that you see. It's the same thing or very similar to the shear rate or the rotation detectors that we've been watching. It's each one of these little rotation areas that we'll keep our eyes on here for the remainder of the evening. One east of North Vernon, another north of Seymour, northwestern Jackson County, these couple into southern Monroe County, all going to be ones that we'll be paying attention to over the next few minutes. And not only rotation, but rotation can indicate too a well-developed thunderstorm that can also produce other things, not just tornadoes, but a strong wind gust and also some hailstones as well with these, perhaps up to 1 inch in diameter, more likely less than that, but still nonetheless could make a little bit of noise. Even as these continue to ride along the far northern tier of the WLKY area, notice I'll zoom out, there is no threat of rainfall whatsoever in the metro and down towards the Ohio River, southward through central Kentucky. So if you're watching us through a good majority of the WLKY region, you're enjoying a pretty nice evening with breezy conditions and warm temperatures. But as we go farther to the north, it's that same wind and that same breeze, not just that, but the warmth and the humidity that's fueling these storms. So it's what we continue to monitor here with the radar looking quite mean into far northern portions of Jackson County. You know, what's funny, Chris, is even as you get down towards Crothersville, Austin, Scottsburg, you look to the north, you see all the gray skies and all the storminess, but it's still a pretty nice evening, you know, just 10 miles south of this storm system with really very little threat of these storms nudging farther to the south.
Yeah, and folks there, say for instance, Brownstown, maybe along those areas, and some of the areas that have really escaped from some of the rainfall, you're likely getting in on some of that cooler outflow from these storms, and you're probably catching a pretty nice breeze. But just know, to your north, maybe by 30-50 miles, you're talking a complete different scene here where we've had some of these strong, some of these rotating supercells, these thunderstorms that have been tracking over the same area, riding right along that boundary that's set up pretty much across the county borders here for our far northern counties that we've been watching these storms track across. And again, now they continue to push eastward. It looks like maybe that rotating thunderstorm that was in parts of Jennings County, northeastern parts of Jennings County, now beginning to push off towards the east, still picking up on a little bit of rotation there. And we're seeing more of it now crossing the border, or getting close to the border, I should say, there for Jackson and Jennings County. And that's going to be working pretty much due east into the same spot. So folks there in North Vernon, some of those outlying communities just outside of the city limits there for North Vernon, heads up, you got another cell that's rotating, bringing once again some heavier rainfall, likely gusty winds, a lot of lightning as well, tracking right back over the same area. Again, back to our west, likely seeing a little bit of rotation there, and then some more back to our west. And again, these storms have no severe thunderstorm warnings on them, no tornado warnings on them. At least back to our west they don't. So that's good. But again, something we have to monitor closely just because we're still seeing some rotation within those thunderstorms as they all continue to push off towards the east. And I've been preaching, I've been talking about it, I feel like all evening now, Matt. It's just the heavy rain working over the same area could provide for some issues. And again, seeing more of these cells develop, working over some of these spots, you're really getting that big time flash flood threat showing up just to our north. Notice though, for northern Jackson County, now we're starting to see some of those darker greens, a little bit of yellow showing up. So for our far northern folks there in Jackson County, you're starting to see the rain totals add up, probably getting closer to a couple inches. It's exactly what Matt just populated for us there along the border. And Lawrence County picking up over an inch of rainfall, close to 2 inches on the northern half of Jennings County. And again, you have more cells firing up way back to your west, all tracking towards the east, and that's going to lead to potential issues. So it's just something to keep in mind. Not only do we have the stronger cells that are rotating, working across these areas, but also we have to keep in mind the heavy rainfall that continues to fall for some of these areas, which could lead to some of those flooding issues. But we zoom things out. It's all to our north. I mean, the rest of us are nice and dry here in the Louisville Metro. In fact, it's been a pretty nice afternoon and evening here across the area, and we're not seeing anything else. We did have a few light showers try to pop up to our south and southwest, but as soon as they went up, they quickly began to fizzle out. The energy, the setup, showing up just to our north here, and that's affecting some of our counties. Did they put a new tornado warning out there?
You know what, Chris?
Looks
they did
like
not. In fact, this is, I was showing this because the latest update is going to be that 9:30 tornado warning, the one for Seymour and back over into northeast Jackson County, that has been allowed to expire. In fact, will be canceled a few minutes early as that rotation is now weaker and moving into Jennings County. The lone tornado warning is now that 9:45 one, and that the main rotation with that system, I'll switch that on the storm relative velocity. You can see he's getting ready to head further on off towards the east and over into portions of, let's say, Ripley County over towards the Versailles area.
Yeah, that looks like that's right on the county border right now. There, Jennings, Ripley County, there's your main action. There's your rotation that we're keeping an eye on. And this storm now crossing over the border into Ripley County. So some good news there as far as folks there in Jennings County, but still for any of the folks in these areas over in Ripley County, still a good idea to get into your safe place because this storm really packing a punch, bringing not only that rotation, but also some heavier rainfall and those pretty gusty winds, high winds as well. I think our threat now as we move a little bit deeper into this evening, later on tonight, will be that threat for some flash flooding as it looks like we have plenty of heavy rain all the way back into Clear Creek, Matt, that's all pushing towards the east again, and we're starting to see those totals add up in northern parts of Jackson County, just north of Seymour, Brownstown, where we're going to start seeing those totals potentially get closer to 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So again, nothing out right now as far as a flash flood warning is concerned, but that's certainly a possibility for some of those areas for the far northern parts of the county. And I would include also northern parts of Jennings County. This was a really hefty storm that moved through, bringing not only the rotation, the high winds, the heavy rainfall, even some small hail. That was certainly a possibility, as Matt mentioned earlier. But notice that cell now beginning to push eastward, taking a lot of the heavier rainfall with it. But again, the cell that's pushed through parts of Jackson County now pushing back into Jennings County, and it's working right over the same area once again. So here, we're likely going to see some rainfall totals exceed over 2 inches. I believe Matt populated it just a few minutes ago. Northern half of the county for Jennings County, some spots picked up 1.5 inches, a little bit more of some rainfall. And now you got another pretty heavy rain efficient producing rain thunderstorm that's moving eastward that's going to work over the same area, providing for that heavy rainfall, which of course could lead to some issues. Matt.
Yeah, Chris, we're going to continue to monitor, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking about that we're going to do here is as we're starting to see the tornado warnings fade and the main part of rotation with that storm, especially the one that continues to have a tornado warning with it into eastern Jennings County, that's now pushing in towards Ripley County and out of the WLKY region. There is still a storm worth watching for you off towards the west of North Vernon in Jennings County, but that storm currently does not have a severe thunderstorm or tornado warning on it, and so we are going to currently watch that cell move off towards the east and still produce the potential for some strong storms. But Chris, you've been mentioning too, this is turning into more of a heavy rain threat with some embedded stronger storms and cells. And so as we get towards now the bottom half of your 9 o'clock hour, I believe what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go say goodbye for a little while on air and get you back to regularly scheduled programming. But we are going to continue to stream on WLKY.com. and online on our Facebook at WLKY News. If you want to stay up to date currently on these storms, we're going to switch over to there and give you the latest at least until 9:45, when the last of that warning will likely end into Jennings County. If we do see an uptick in these stronger storms, we'll break back into coverage and continue to warn you. But right now it looks like we're seeing a bit of a lull in the worst of the tornado threat across the WLKY region. And so with that said, for Chris Johnson, who's been with you all afternoon and evening, Chris, I know you'll be updating everyone on the complete forecast at 11 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get everyone back to the programs.
And if we succeed, we'll be facing a professional assassin who's eluded every cop in the state and whose sole purpose